Hey guys, welcome to Rosie's Dessert Spot. In this episode, I'll be teaching you how to watercolor onto a fondant cake. For the watercolor, I'm using just some vodka alcohol. You could use rose water as well, and some Americolor gel food colors. I've used Regal Purple, Super Red, and Turquoise for these. I'm taking a little bit of that gel food color and putting it into a second cavity just to water it really water it down. I'm just going to have like a bit of a wash over my fondant cake to begin with. So you can see here just how light that is. And I'm making sure to make wide brush strokes, just back and forth like that, and really thin out that layer. Why am I thinning it out? Because I really want to show the texture of my brush as well. So the thinner it is, the drier your brush as it travels over that wet paint, it creates a really pretty texture on the cake. It's a kind of typical watercolor texture. After I've covered the whole cake, I'm going in again with the same shade, but in a lot more of it, so it's a lot thicker. And then I'm going back and forth again, and I'm creating those lines that you can see there, and I think that looked really nice too. And even though I did add a bit more water, those brush strokes, the texture still remained, which was really good. So you can see here, final effect. Make sure to do the top of the cake and also your top tier as well if you're doing a tiered cake. So same process, got a wash going. Then once I've finished covering the cake with the wash, I'll go in again with a little bit more of that color. And I've used my turntable to cover the top of the cake, just because as I was doing it by hand, my circles weren't perfect, and when you use a Lazy Susan or your cake turntable, it's a lot easier. If you're using a brush, you're likely to get loose bristles coming onto the cake, so do watch out for those, because that's definitely not fun. Here I'm using the thicker paint again, just adding some more on top and thinning that out, but not as thin as the first layer. Then I'm going to start going over with the darker colors. So I've added a little bit more of my gel food color into the alcohol to make a much darker paint. Taking off any excess and then just doing small brush strokes back and forth. Just in random places. Some of them will be really big, some really small, just very random, and always moving back and forth, always following that direction, so you don't want to suddenly change direction and go up and down. I personally found that the smaller strokes did look a lot nicer compared to the big bulky strokes. Then at the very top, I again used my turntable and kept my hand pretty steady for most of the time. That just made much neater, uniform looking strokes. Adding a little bit more alcohol now. I'm using my Super Red gel food color. I'm going to melt that down, dissolve that into the alcohol, and then place a bit more alcohol into a second cavity and water that down even more, so I have a nice light pastel color. Doing the exact same thing that I did with my purple, just going back and forth. You might want to overlap on the purple, just kind of blend in those colors, or just have it on its own as well. Looks really nice. Just spacing them out evenly. Looks nice and random. Do the same for the top of the cake. And then here I've done the exact same thing, and then I'm going in with a turquoise color now. The turquoise looked really, really good in combination with the Super Red and the Regal Purple. So following the same methods, back and forth. And then for the top of the cake, just a little dollop in the center, and you can tell how terrible my painting skills are here. I have a very unsteady hand, but that's okay. That's where the turntable came in. So you really don't need to have very much skill at all to do this sort of cake. I personally don't have any experience in painting. I just thought this would be a really cool idea. So if I can do it, you guys can definitely do it. Just like so. Then I've used a little bit of edible gold dust in the background there and my blush brush, tapping off any excess. And my cake has dried for about an hour now. It's still a little bit wet, but it is much drier than before. and just dabbing that gold dust onto the cake. Taking off any excess, brushing it back and forth. And then to finish it off, I'm using gold leaf. Now I wanted to put much larger pieces on here, and I've tried to use a brush. It wasn't working for me, decided, you know what, I'm just gonna use my fingers, and it worked a lot better. I got much larger pieces. It looked a lot more jagged, which is really cool. In my opinion, I think it looks really nice. And just looked a lot nicer that way, so it's definitely easier to use your fingers. And that's how you create a watercolor cake. Thanks guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this really quick tutorial. Watercoloring is super easy. You might think a little bit too much into it because it is being hand painted, and so you think, oh, you know, I'm not too good at painting. This doesn't take much thought at all. You just sort of dab the colors wherever you think would look nice. Maybe try not to have too much color in one section. Do try to make it a bit more dispersed. So that's a tip I would give. And definitely play around with the colors. If you want to make them blend a bit more, add a little bit more alcohol. One thing I will say is gold leaf just looks amazing wherever you put it, especially when you put it on pastel sort of colors like this, and it contrasts really nicely, as you can see. I like the way it is just as is. I did make a rose to go on top. I didn't like the way it looked though. Let me know if that was too much. I honestly think that was a little bit too much, but the finished product was meant to look like that. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will catch you next time.